Welcome to the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Brenda. And this is a podcast where we highlight educators who innovate, engage, and inspire through the use of technology. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 39 of the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. Are you looking to find more ways that your students can experience curiosity, kindness, and empathy? Join us as we visit with Wendy Turner and listen to her incredible experiences with social-emotional learning. She began her second career as a teacher at 40 and became the 2017 Delaware Teacher of the Year just a few short years later. Wendy also shares with us a heart-wrenching story from her first year of teaching that made her want to make social-emotional learning the biggest tool in her tech tool belt. So, without further ado, our interview with Wendy Turner.
Welcome, everyone. Today on the My Tech Toolbelt podcast, we are so excited to have Wendy Turner joining us. Wendy is the 2017 Delaware Teacher of the Year. Yay!
Yay!
I wish we had an audio track.
I know. Applause.
Applause. And you're going to talk to us today about how you're using Empatico in your social-emotional teaching with your students. And I'm so excited to hear about this. In our pre-interview, it got me really excited about the work you're doing with kids and how it's so transferable across grade levels. And so just to kick us off, give us a little quick bio about yourself and your journey to get to where you are today.
Sure. So I'm Wendy Turner. I teach second grade at Mount Pleasant Elementary School in suburban Wilmington, Delaware. I'm just started my 10th year of teaching, and I became a teacher when I was 40 years old. So I really have to call it a calling, because why would you leave a higher paying job to take on one of the toughest jobs in the world? But once we had a daughter, I just felt like I wasn't rewarding enough to be sitting at my desk in the business world every day. And so I decided to go down the path towards teaching. I went to school at night for 4 years. Wow. And I love my job now. And I always say that my worst day in my current job is infinitely better than my best day in my old job, because even on a hard day, you can find something to celebrate and something great about the humans that you're working with. So I have always been a champion of and have celebrated and embraced social emotional learning. I talk about it wherever I go to whoever I can. And I do believe that social emotional learning is as important, or perhaps more important, than academic learning, because I don't believe that kids or anyone can uncover and access their true full academic potential unless they unlock and access their social emotional self and understand what drives them and what challenges they have, and how to be self-aware. So I believe also that learning must have a real world context. We want our kids to understand what we're doing in the classroom, how it relates to the real world, or they're not going to buy into it. So probably for those two reasons, I was recognized as the 2017 Delaware Teacher of the Year, and I continue to champion those causes as I do my work with my 7 and 8 year olds.
So wonderful. So cool. So what kind of sparked you to start bringing social emotional into the classroom? Like, what was was there like an event, or was it just like, this has always been like, because you said this has always been something you've been championing, but what brought it into second grade?
When I look back, when I was going to school at night to become a teacher, I actually did this recently. I looked back to one of my earliest versions of my teaching philosophy. You have to articulate your teaching philosophy as a student. And going back all the way, this was probably written around 2008, 2009, I said something like, I need to teach my students how to be successful human beings. And so there I had said it, even before I became a full-time teacher. And I believe that. And something extraordinary did happen in my very first year of teaching. I began my job teaching second grade. And in the first 2 weeks of school, one of my students lost his mom. Oh. So it was an incredibly sad situation. It was incredibly hard for everyone to figure out what to do, including myself. And I was almost kind of like frozen with fear. But I immediately talked to my principal, talked to the guidance counselor, and I realized that not only did we have to support my student in the loss of his mom, we had to support the entire classroom community of these 22 or 23 small children who were trying to process that as well. And then I had to help shepherd these other learners through a path where they could be there for that student. Right? So you're just kind of like all these dynamics happening at once. And so what we did is we didn't pretend it didn't happen. Right? We didn't push it in a corner. We talked about it. We talked about our feelings and our fears. And ultimately, we ended up doing an incredible charity project that resulted in a big donation to the American Cancer Society. And the kids took charge of that that learning in that project themselves. I'll just tell you about it quickly. It sounds crazy. The father told me after his wife had died that he said, wow, I really have to learn how to cook now. Right. And so that's a big thing. So the kids wanted to make a cookbook for the family.
Wonderful.
So they worked with their families and they all brought in like their favorite recipe and we made this cute little cookbook. And I had shared it with a few people and some people said, this is really good. You could actually maybe produce copies of it and sell it. And I said, okay, that's true. How can we do that? And here I'm in my first year of teaching where I don't know what's what. I'm just trying to survive. And I said, yes, we can do that. So what we ended up doing is we collected tons of crayons, old crayons, thousands of them, broken bits. And I worked with another mom and we baked them into shapes like hearts and animals and we sold them in our school and we raised enough money to pay for printing and reproduction costs of this cookbook.
Wow.
And we sold we sold 500 copies of it and we raised $5,000.
Oh my
and
gosh.
The kids would peel the crayons and they would count them. There was like a math activity with the counting. And then they had to set up a shop to sell them. And they actually worked, with parent help, like at a register. And all the kids in the school came to buy the crayons. So it was like an incredible real world learning experience. And I think that happening in my first year of school just settled it for me. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do real world things. We're going to get through hard things together. We're going to be creative. We're going to be innovative and we're going to be good people. So maybe that's how I got started. So, and so remain so firmly rooted in that.
Wow. Well, that's amazing.
So,
A first year experience to be so overwhelming. I mean,
transformative.
Wow. And transformative.
Wow,
absolutely. But it's a lot to take on your first year.
Yeah, generally there's this idea that you just try and survive your first year and you don't, and that people say you don't know what you don't know and you actually don't know what that means your first year. And a few years later, you're like, yeah, now I understand what that means. So I think things happen for a reason. And I think all my years in the business world before I became a teacher helped me in terms of my confidence and navigating relationships so I could do that. I don't know if it had happened 10 years earlier in my life, would I have been able to do that?
Right.
But it does remain a great story and an important story to share. And all of that was rooted in empathy, which I think is like the most important thing we need to have as humans, adults and children, as we navigate an ever more connected and complex world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned about not only dealing with and helping the one student, but you're helping the entire class because you have all these students saying, well, if their mom passed away, then my mom could pass away. Right. And
what does that look like?
Yeah. And so they're all thinking that.
And I will also tell you that I helped myself. Because I used to sit and cry and wonder what I was going to do at night. And going through this journey was, in a way, healing for me as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it helped every single person that was involved.
Wow. I'm emotional right now because I'm feeling, you're so right that it was transformative for every single person. So thank you for sharing that story. That's wonderful and beautiful. And so over the course of time, you found Empatico.
Right. Exactly.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'll share my my story of how I found Empatico. So when I was the teacher of the year, I was lucky enough to meet 50 incredible teachers from around the country, one from every state. And we had certain opportunities open up to us through a network of those teachers. And there was a fellowship where you could work with Empatico, and it was a new tool at the time. It's an online platform that connects elementary classrooms around the world to each other. And the hope is that kids will be curious, be engaged, and spark kindness and empathy with each other by understanding different cultures. And it's done with a free website and a free platform that's incredibly easy to use. And I heard about it, it was May of 2018. Okay. So it's May, you have about a month left of school. So you know what that's like. It's hard. You're tired. The kids are exhausted. And I heard about this Empatico and I wrote it on a sticky note and I placed the sticky note on the corner of my desk because I said, I really want to try this next year, but I'm kind of wrapping up with another fellowship I was involved in and all these year-end activities were happening. And it was like May 15th and I couldn't help myself. I had to try it. So I picked up the sticky and I signed up on May 15th because I said, I really want to understand this tool. And so I was matched with a classroom. I'm in Delaware. I was matched with a classroom in Minnesota. And for the last 2 weeks of the school year, my students, which were third graders, we had video conferences with students in Minnesota. And we just talked about how kids help in communities. So they talked about being involved in a Relay for Life project that they had. And our class talked about, we were involved in a project with the Philadelphia Zoo that has kids taking on local action to benefit the environment. So we talked about that. We talked about how kids in Minnesota love the Vikings and fishing. There was a little trash talk because the Philadelphia Eagles had just won the Super Bowl that year. So they connected over football. We found out there was one student in my class who loved ice hockey. So there were all these kids in Minnesota who loved ice hockey. And we talked about things like, hey, isn't it interesting? All the students in Minnesota are white. And in our class, we have Indian and African American and Caucasian and Asian students. So just like noticing those differences, but not in any kind of negative way. And the teachers I worked with were fantastic. And we actually came up with a couple of extension ideas after our video conference. We wrote letters to each other. So we made sure that the ice hockey loving student in my class was writing a letter to some ice hockey fans in Minnesota. So getting a written letter from a child halfway across the country is just awesome. And then we set up a little Flipgrid video chat. Flipgrid's another great ed tech tool, and the kids can make little videos to introduce themselves to each other and kind of comment on them. So for 2 to 3 weeks, it was a great experience, and I was sold. And I really wanted to share about the tool because if it was that easy that I could use it at the end of the year, seamlessly and have my kids be completely engaged. Wow, isn't that something I should talk about and tell people about? And my kids were funny. They couldn't wait to see the class again, and they turned Empatico into a verb. Like, when are we going to Empatico? I want to Empatico again, Mrs. Turner. So whenever you can get that level of student engagement and excitement, you've hit on something really, really good.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so nice to be able to try something out at the very end of the school year, because those are kind of down weeks anyway, and you might as well try some other stuff, right? And
exactly.
Then you'll be able to really launch well the next year.
So and I'll segue into how I did launch incredibly well the next year if I could share the rest of the story. So the next year, so around that same time I was using Empatico, I found out I was an NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellow, again with 50 teachers from around the country, and I would be traveling to South Africa the following year. Wow. So as I was getting ready to start that fellowship, I said to myself, I really want to connect with a classroom in Africa because that'll tie in really well with my work as an NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellow and global learning. So they set me up with a teacher in Nigeria. And it turns out this teacher is nothing short of incredible. He is a fellow in a program called Teach for Nigeria, which is similar to the Teach for America Teacher Corps, who go into high need schools where they need placements. And he and I began a journey that has still exists. We're friends now. We work together now. And we connected our classrooms, 4th grade classroom in Nigeria I was teaching 2nd grade last year in Wilmington, Delaware. And I can only tell you that it was a joyful, beautiful journey of friendship among these kids. And again, we noticed so many things. Our classrooms looked different. We had different numbers of kids in classrooms. We had different materials and supplies in classrooms, but we just shared about our schools and our lives, and there were tons of smiles. We eventually had connections where we taught each other how to dance. So my kids are teaching the kids in Nigeria the Fortnite dances, like the floss and the shoot, and they're teaching us traditional African dances. And at one point we had this great video, I shared it out on Twitter, where my kids are doing the African dance in my classroom, watching the other student on the screen who's teaching them the dance. So just incredible. And we learned that the classroom that we connected with, it was part of the Teach for Nigeria fellowship program. It was a high needs classroom without a lot of resources. So we ended up sending over some books and soccer balls and things like that. And it wasn't anything but an act of kindness for friends. Like, can I do this for someone? And I think they thought about, well, what if we didn't have enough supplies? How would that feel? And then when you strike that empathy, considering what it might be like in someone else's shoes, and you say, well, if I didn't have many books, I would love it if someone sent me some books. So why don't we do that? So there was a little bit of that involved. We taught each other about folktales. I was able to really meet a 2nd grade folktale standard by one of our video interactions, where my class taught the kids in Africa, in Nigeria, about a Nigerian folktale that we had read and learned about in our class. We compared weather, so many things. It was endless. So it was joyful. It was powerful. I could see my kids becoming more confident as they were able to speak to kids 5,000 miles away. Some kids didn't know where Africa was on a map of the world before we started the project. And some kids were afraid to speak out loud in a setting. And the kids' minds were just blown. They were like, wow, I didn't even know we could do this. Like, we can talk to kids 5,000 miles away. This is amazing. They loved it. Again, high engagement. You're connecting with other human beings around the world, and you're understanding what people are like far away. And knowledge or understanding is the enemy of fear, right? So now you've got 21 kids or 22 kids in suburban Wilmington, Delaware, who have a really positive idea about a classroom of kids in Nigeria. That's extraordinary. How do you possibly do that? You do it with Empatico, and it's free and easy to use. It's incredible.
That is incredible, especially when you're a student. You have your view, and you think everybody is just like me,
and the world revolves around me. Because when you're 7 and 8, it does.
That's it. It's when you're that age, your life consists of your activities, your family, your friends, your local community. And that is very typical. So there's nothing wrong with that. But then the view or the job of the educator is to open your students' eyes to the world and just teach them that there's other things out there without judgment or anything. It's just letting people know that there's other things out there. And I could see my students really, and their parents really, really enjoying that. And we had a very diverse classroom last year, and they just really embraced the experience. And it was wonderful to see. Some of the parents would actually come in because of the time change. We had to have exchanges early, like 30 minutes before school began. Sometimes the parents would come in and just watch the whole thing and take videos. They just loved it.
I bet.
I was going to say, like, how did communicating to parents about global awareness and the idea of empathy, how did you get that parent buy-in, or did you?
Yeah. Empatico has some ready-to-use tools where you can actually print off a letter to share with parents about what you're doing. And so I always connect it to that social emotional learning. I say we're going to be engaging in some really terrific social emotional learning, which helps us be more successful human beings. And part of this is going to be talking to kids in another culture. And they really didn't have a problem with it. They liked the idea. So it wasn't a hard sell for me at all.
That's awesome.
What have you heard from the students? Like, are they really all engaged in this as well? And they want...
Yes. So, for instance, I remember this one student ran in one day last year, and he's like, Mrs. Turner, look what I got at the library. And he just holds up this book about Nigeria. And he's like, I want to read this book in class. Can I share it with the class? I said, yes. Now, would that have happened if we hadn't had the connection? I don't think so. We did a homework project where the kids had to explore one aspect of Nigerian culture, whether it was food or dress or art, famous people, education. And some people ended up making Nigerian foods at home and trying them and bring them into school. So that's pretty extraordinary. So they were very, very excited about it. I remember towards the end of the year, we were outside. It was like a fun day for second grade. We had bouncy houses and things, and we were taking turns, taking breaks. And someone was asking me, what are you doing this summer, Mrs. Turner? I said, well, I'll go on vacation with my family, and I am going to go to South Africa. And I said, are you going anywhere? And she said, I'm not sure. I don't know what we're doing. I said, well, where would you like to go? And she said, I'd like to go to Nigeria.
I was just going to ask that question. It's so
You
funny.
think a 7-year-old would have said that if we hadn't had the connection? And we did this awesome activity last year where we mixed up paints to match our skin tones. I had seen it on Twitter. So every child had a little jar of paint that exactly matched their skin tone. And we made this, it was November, so we were making a turkey. And everyone painted a feather in their skin tone. So we had a beautiful, multicultural, diverse turkey. And so we started to say, what's the turkey's name? Where's the turkey live? What does the turkey like? Well, the turkey lived in Nigeria.
Of course.
Right? So it's just coming in from everywhere. So it just permeated things. And this is the joy of working with 7 and 8-year-olds, right? So just by those little things. And then of course they'd see, I miss my friends. When are we going to talk to them again? Right. When are we going to see Mr. K? My partner's name is Alawasi and Coyote. And so we named him Mr. K. When am I going to see Mr. K? Mm-hmm. I miss seeing everybody. So they really enjoyed it. And hey, it's much better than doing a worksheet.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that engaging real work. If I go back to my core tenets of my teaching philosophy, teaching people how to be successful human beings and connecting learning to the real world, that checks both of those boxes.
Oh, and then some. That's just, I mean, those are just magical moments.
And so if you don't mind, I'd like to just explain how the connection has continued.
Please.
So in a really exciting way. So my fellow teacher is extraordinary. So as I mentioned, he's a young person. He's a fellow with the Teach for Nigeria Network, and he's also a social entrepreneur. He has a startup in Nigeria called School Linka, and it's dedicated to training teachers because some teachers in Nigeria haven't received professional development in 12 years. Wow. So they have kids that are out of school in Nigeria, kids who don't go to school. Then they also have the challenge of qualified teachers. So he's really trying to make headway in this space with having this startup and providing training for teachers. And because we've stayed connected, he asked me to develop professional development for his startup on social emotional learning for 200 teachers in Nigeria.
Wow.
So I don't know how I could say with complete authority and authenticity, just if you use Empatico, see where Empatico can take you, because it can take you so far. And here I am, one of my personal mantras is I need to make the world a better place. I do that by being a teacher. I don't know if you guys have heard of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are 17 goals that focus on big problems around the world. And SDG number 4 is called quality education. And it says that every child has the right to a quality education. Malala from Pakistan is a very big face of that goal. And so I feel like this is, by me providing this training and interacting with these teachers in Nigeria, this is my personal commitment to the SDGs and particularly quality education. And, I have to do it on my own time. I have to do it at night. I don't get paid for it or anything like that, but I'm so thrilled that he asked me, number one, and number two, that I can interact with these teachers who face enormous challenges and hopefully empower them to be the best teachers that they can be for their students and improve outcomes for kids. So I'm thrilled that he asked me to do that, which is the result of our friendship.
Wow. That's wonderful. And it's called School Link Up.
School Linka. So it's SCHOOLINKA. I have to look up the website because I think it has an NG at the end for Nigeria because the website was based in Nigeria. And so he's starting a fellowship with 200 teachers over the next few months. And so I'm listed as faculty. And I just think that's incredibly cool.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So neat.
Yeah, it is.
And so your students are much more globally aware. They now know where Africa is. So walk me through, a teacher this year listens to our podcast and is like, I'm all in, I want to try this. I go to Empatico.
It's actually empatico.org, yeah.
We sign up and I see it says sign up for free right here on the website. And then what happens?
All right, so you're on the website right now. What I'd actually recommend any teacher out there who wants to do this, play the video that's on the homepage of the website. Watch the video because it just in about 2.5 minutes briefly tells you how it works. And basically what it will do is you sign up for free. You indicate what grade you teach, where you're located. You indicate what times you're available, right? Because they have to do some matching with the time zone. And Empatico has ready-to-use activities on their website. There's things like getting to know you, children helping in communities, games we play, weather outside our window, something about energy. You indicate which of those topics you like. Okay. So what they'll do is they'll actually then run a computer algorithm to match you up with someone who has similar activities that they like and is available during the same time. A new feature. So what I love about Empatico is they're constantly refining their product. Their activities are now aligned to the global goals that I just mentioned. You can see which ones line up with global goals. And I believe now they have a feature where you can request a teacher match. So say you're focused on Asia or you want to match with someone in the United States on the West Coast, you can actually choose your matches. And they also have accommodations in their activities to gear them if you're working with younger students, like kindergarten students, or if you're working with special education students. So I think their product is so good because it's offering this access equitably to lots of different groups and giving you some choice there as well. Once you do that, you'll receive a match, and they have a chat feature in their tool. So you can message them just like you would be messaging a friend over iMessage or something. And you can talk to each other to figure out when you want to meet, what activity you're going to do. And they did something really great last year. You can turn on notifications on your phone. So if someone messages me inside the Empatico tool, I'll get a text that says you have a new message from your partner. So you don't always have to go back and check it.
Awesome. So there's a phone app that goes with it?
There is not a phone app, but for a lot of teachers, and I found this out when I met with Empatico last year, a lot of teachers, their only technology is their phone.
Right.
Like they might be managing through the whole exchange through their phone, just holding it up for their kids. You just use a web browser in your phone, so Chrome or Safari or something like that. I don't believe there's an actual app yet.
Got it. So there's somehow connecting to like text messaging your cell phone number or something.
Exactly. They're putting your cell phone number in there. So seamless, easy. Again, everyone's phone is in your hand now all the time. I have a projector and a big screen in my room. I've seen images of other people just doing the exchange with one laptop in the front of the room. And yes, I'm sure there's teachers that are just using their personal phone to do that. But you can see kids crowded around, even that little image of live people somewhere else in the world that you're talking to. It's going to work because it's just so powerful.
Amazing. I also wanted to ask you about, have you heard from kids that have done this maybe a few years?
So the tool is about 2 years old.
Oh,
they just had, yeah. Okay. And actually, let me explain a little bit of the background. So Empatico is connected to the Kind Snacks company, and they make healthy snacks with ingredients. You can see the idea is to be kind to your body. And so this Empatico is part of I believe it's part of the Kind charitable foundation. And the founder, Daniel Lubetzky, is an entrepreneur, and he started Empatico. He shared the story of his family during the Holocaust, where his family was spared by the kindness of one German soldier. And he wanted to look into whether or not kids could develop kindness as a skill with direct practice and instruction with it. And I believe you can develop kindness in that way, very much like you would learn anything else, like a math skill. So that's where Empatico came from. It's 2 years old. They have, I believe, over 25,000 teachers signed up. You can see it there on the website. And they've had thousands and thousands of exchanges going on. So my kids last year after our exchanges, we participated in a local art contest where the theme was peace. And their artwork was certainly colored by our experience with our friends in Nigeria and Empatico. So I do run into those parents in the community, and some of those kids, I still see them in my school because now they're in third grade, and they do mention it. They love it, and they want to tell their teachers this year about it. So it's had a lasting impression on them. I think Empatico will have more data as years go on. In year one, they did partner with Stanford to do some research studies, and they found that they actually grew the level of empathy in students through the exchanges. So if you have a questionnaire that kids answer before the exchanges, and then that same set of questions afterwards, they have seen growth. And I believe on their website, there may be some stats related to that as well. So there's a significant research component because they want to prove that this works.
I just looked it up. 27,819 registered educators as of today.
Yeah.
33,225 students participating in over 143 countries.
Wow.
Isn't 143 countries? Isn't that extraordinary?
That's amazing. That's amazing. And in 2 years.
Right. And the tech piece is so good. Their technology, they keep refining it and adding little things like that notification on your cell phone that you have a new message. They're a company that's like, talk about, there's this phrase in education, ed tech for good. I'm sure you guys know about this. This is absolutely a company dedicated to ed tech for good. And they are refining their product based on feedback from their users. And again, it's 100% free, and it's really, really easy to use. If you can use it on your phone or in a fancy setup with a projector, that's a great product.
And this is live online, or it could be offline, because you said you were using Flipgrid kind of in offline times?
The idea is to have a live exchange, but sometimes time differences don't allow for that. So when so this is interesting. And again, great learning for my kids. When we first started to connect, the internet connection at the school in Nigeria was not strong enough to support a live exchange. So the way we got around that in the beginning was we just made videos and we sent them back and forth to each other. So for instance, my class, every child came up with a question. What's it like in Nigeria? Do you have pets there? Do you have a cafeteria? How many kids are in your class? Do you like soccer? And we just sent a video, and then they sent us a video back of them answering questions. And we did that for a few months. And there's an activity on the Empatico platform called Tour My School, where you would go to the different areas of your school and take videos and share what it looks like. We took videos of our playground, our cafeteria, our school garden, our classroom, and we shared it that way. Then they were able to get a stronger, and for my kids, they didn't understand. What do you mean they don't have strong internet?
Right.
So again, just like opening your eyes up to some things, there are people that don't have any access to internet connections, and what could that do for your learning? Later on, they were able to get a stronger internet connection, and it supported live exchanges. So the first day we had a live exchange and it worked, the kids were like, everyone's, waving and gasping, like, there they are, Mr. K, oh my gosh, like that level of excitement. It was almost kind of cool the way ours had built up from the video sharing to the live exchange. And it was just like an explosion of excitement when we finally were able to exchange live.
So cool.
I know.
It really is. It really, really is.
So not only are you meeting these sustainable goals, these global goals, you're meeting so many other, I would say, standards, or the other word I'm looking for is
learning goals.
Learning goals. I mean, your science, or your social studies, and all of these other pieces, right? That are,
you can make it whatever you want. So we have the Common Core State Standards in the state of Delaware. So there are standards related to speaking and listening, which we work on all the time. This is great for that. I mentioned a folktale standard. There's a literature standard in second grade about understanding folktales and being able to identify the moral or the lesson of a folktale. So I found a Nigerian folktale that we read in class, and we broke it apart. We did something called a jigsaw activity where every table of kids did one piece of the story. What's the setting? Who are the characters? What's the moral? What's the problem? What's the solution? Then we presented that over a live video exchange to the kids in Nigeria. And they hadn't seen this Nigerian folktale, so it was kind of cool. And we had introduced folktales in my classroom the week before, so they had some knowledge on it. I think that's so much more powerful for my students because it's a higher order thinking skill to present or explain your thinking to someone than it is to just understand it yourself. So that was I would love to do that again this year because that's just a really engaging way for my kids to work on the folktale standard. And something much more memorable. And again, by reading a Nigerian folktale, you're exposing your kids to diverse cultures and thinking about the world, looking, where is this located on the map? Here we are. Let's go to Google Earth. Let's calculate how many miles it is from us to Nigeria. Let's look at the time change, and that can tie into math time lessons. Like there's really endless opportunities. I had seen in a picture that they sent us from Nigeria, a word problem written on the chalkboard, like just written out. So I just typed up those word problems and put them on the tables one day and said, let's do these word problems that were on the Nigerian chalkboard. And they're like, whoa.
Nigerian math.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, this is how much a pair of shoes costs in Nigeria. What does that mean? So just put all these little things you can do to open up your students' eyes to the world. This is like tailor-made for it. I mentioned there was a activity about weather. So you could do data tracking through weather, like how many days of sunshine or rain or wind do you see? And that would tie into math standards on data. I pride myself and try to be really innovative and creative with my teaching. So I feel like give me any standard and I can figure out a hands-on engaging lesson to work on it with. And you can use Empatico as a framework for that in the global goals. And that's really engaging and fun. A lot more fun for me as an educator as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, because this isn't something that you're just grabbing right out of a textbook.
No. So it has a real world implication, real world feel. It might be a little more work to pull the pieces together, but I enjoy that. And I am relentless with innovation because I think the kids need it and deserve it. Even the things I did in my classroom 10 years ago, 5 years ago to now are different, and they should be as the world is rapidly changing and kids are changing as well.
So I'm thinking, I actually teach for America students, quite a few Teach for America students they're current in-service teachers in these inner city spaces. The majority of my students are Teach for America at this point. And I want to introduce them to this idea of Empatico and social-emotional. And so they would go to the website, they would get started. I was wondering, is there because they're also students, but they're also teachers, is there a way for me, other than to put them on the website and have them sign up and connect with the teacher, is there a group externally, like a Facebook group or a Twitter group that they could get started and just start making connections with?
Such a great question. So so they'll sign up on the website as a teacher, right? Because they are teaching. I do want to mention too, right now it's K through 6. So it's really an elementary platform. I just want to make sure, that they are working on Empatico for middle and high school teachers as well, because they see how impactful and valuable it is. And all the teachers around the country that I'm friends with keep saying, when's Empatico going to be ready for the older kids? And it will be someday. So they'll sign up as a teacher. So there is an Empatico Educators Facebook group. So if you just go into Facebook and search Empatico Educators, I'm a member of that group. I will also say, on Twitter, there's a huge presence of Empatico educators and Empatico themselves. They're tweeting constantly. They're sharing and retweeting pictures of educators. A lot of teachers will actually take pictures of their exchanges, tag Empatico, tag their partner teacher, and put that out on Twitter. So if you just searched hashtag Spark Empathy, that's a way to look up some of the Twitter postings for Empatico. Huge community on Twitter. And then that Facebook group is a place where you can ask questions, you can make connections. You can say, I'm not sure about this. Some teachers are nervous about technology. And that is absolutely understandable. So there's a support system there. And I will tell you that the people that work there are incredible too. They are helpful. They are kind. They will work through tech problems with you. They'll get back to you. They're just wonderful human beings.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what it must feel like for you as an educator to see the growth in the students and their compassion growing all the time. Like even when you had mentioned the group from Nigeria did not ask for items.
Oh, no.
It's just your school, your classroom actually decided on their own that they wanted to donate and find some items to send over to them.
Yeah. And it was sending them to friends. And you have to, I work very hard on a culture of kindness in my classroom. And so this kind of fits into all that. And if you go back to the Daniel Lubetzky, the founder of the Kind Snacks Corporation, and his dream for Empatico is to develop curiosity, kindness, and empathy among children, because that's where we need to start. Because a lot of the problems we have in the world today are learned because of ideas about people who are different. So if you start with children, that's a really great place to start. Daniel did a 10-minute talk about Empatico. If you Google Daniel Lubetzky NEA Foundation Symposium, he has I think it's a 10 to 12-minute talk where he talks about his life story, very powerful, and the creation of Empatico and some of the educators that worked on it. I'm friends with two incredible educators, Michael Dunley in New Jersey and Melissa Collins in Memphis, and they're elementary school classrooms connected. Melissa's classroom is 100% African-American, and they are located in Memphis, and Michael's class is 100% white, located in southern New Jersey. And they had a connection and exchange over the course of a year. Some of those kids on both sides had never spoken to a person of the opposite race.
Wow.
And they, before you know it, said, can we send gifts to our friends? And Melissa and Michael are going to the post office, sending things that they come in, and even kids who don't have a lot, they're coming in like, I want to send this to my friend. And all that, Daniel goes into a lot of that in that talk. That's another really valuable piece to look at and just understand the context of Empatico and the story behind it. So there's stories like that all over the place.
But for them to have friends,
yes,
people that they consider friends in time and a place and a space that we're in, like right now, just, kind of globally, is so magical, because
it's the right word, magical. Yeah.
I mean, because now we hopefully are changing the path of the future, right? With less hate and less kind of, I don't like to use the word ignorance in a way that's bad, but like ignorance at being unaware of the other folks around you,
right?
That type of ignorance, not academic ignorance, but just
so. Exactly. And so that knowledge is the enemy of fear.
Right.
So when you build knowledge and understanding, you're going to displace fear around other people or other places or other religions, other cultures, anything.
Because you just don't know. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Exactly.
I love it.
So it's, I can't tell you how much I love it. Like, I hope the enthusiasm is coming through here. I also want to tell you, any listener, I'm a resource. So you can reach out to me if you have questions about it, if you're working with it. I've done some trainings over the summer with teachers in my district who are trying to start with it. And I have a presentation I can even share on I have a Teacher of the Year Facebook page, as well as I'm out on Twitter, and I can share those resources as well.
That'd be awesome. So how would our friends and listeners get a hold of you as a resource?
So you can tag me or message me on Twitter. I'm at Mrs. Wendy M. Turner on Twitter. And then also, if you go into Facebook, search Wendy Turner, 2017 Delaware Teacher of the Year, and I have a page that's just my professional page. You can like that page and you can message me through it, and you can see postings of different projects I've done, work with my kids, and I really just make it a place of positivity and inspiration, hopefully. And I talk a lot about social emotional learning there, posting articles and things that inform me and help me that I want to share with others.
Awesome.
I have one little note here, and I think previously we had spoken about some bracelets.
Yes, okay.
So
for emotional regulation with rubber bracelets. So I only say that because that's literally the title of a blog post that I wrote about supporting emotional regulation. So a big piece of social emotional learning is self-awareness and self-management. And I think with younger kids, we have to normalize difficult emotions and negative emotions. So I have a system, and I did not make this up. I heard about this at a professional development I went to in Delaware several years ago, but I started it right away, and it's been incredible. I have my kids, when they come in the morning, they put on a green, yellow, or red bracelet to indicate nonverbally to me their emotional state and to the other members of the classroom. And that just tells me if they're struggling, if they're having a hard time, if they're having a good day. And if we see red and yellow, the culture in our classroom is such that we can empathize with them and we can help them, find out what's going on with somebody. I always check in with kids on red. I say, can you tell me why you're on red? And sometimes they won't. And sometimes they will share something. And it could be something outside the classroom that happened yesterday. It could be a worry about something going on after school. What you have to normalize and accept too is that someone's red could be someone else's green. And that's okay, because everyone is in their own space around their emotions and what's going on in their lives. So it's really powerful. We just do like a little emotion check-in where we all stick out our arms and look at the bracelets in the morning. And I have a few kids share why they're on that color. And if I forget it, they're like, hey, we didn't do the emotion check-in, Mrs. Turner. We need to do that. Like, they really love that. And together with that culture of kindness, we're trying to build, you can see the kids and really build empathy in the classroom. One quick story, I have round tables in my classroom because I feel like round tables really support collaboration and communication, because kids have to look at each other and speak. So kids were working on a math task at the round tables. There's 4 kids at a table. And I'm walking around the room checking in, and there's this one kid that is getting so mad because no one is listening to him. So he's banging the table, and all of a sudden he gets up from the table and he goes over to the bin with the bracelets, and he slams down the green one and puts a red one on and goes back to the table. And all the kids stop and go, oh my God, he's wearing a red bracelet. We better listen to him. And they did.
Wow.
And so that was the way the kids navigated that. And he was able to signify how he was feeling. He was feeling very frustrated because no one was listening to his idea. And then later he went back and put a green bracelet on after they had listened to him. So I just like, that is empathy in action, like in the classroom with a very small way. And if I didn't have that tool available, I'm not sure how that child would have been able to successfully navigate that situation.
Right. And so you're just buying these really cheap.
Yeah.
Red.
They're on Amazon. The jelly bracelets you get at fairs and things like that.
Right. Okay.
So if you could Google Wendy Turner rubber bracelets for emotional regulation, you'll find a blog that I wrote, and in there it tells you how to get started. And there's a link within the blog post where you can link to Amazon to buy the bracelets.
Awesome.
And it's funny, Teacher to Teacher, which is a really strong community on Twitter, I wrote an article about it for them, and they shared it, and it was incredible. It was shared like over 2,500 times within a few days, that article. And I think that this practice works for all ages. And I think that knowing how your kids are feeling when they walk into their room is going to inform you and help you with the learning. So that, I couldn't believe it actually when the article was shared so many times. I think it was on Facebook and hundreds of comments. And then I've since then gotten emails from people really around the world asking about this practice. So something like that, yeah, that's powerful. So again, that's under the umbrella of SEL, which is my passion. So it works. I wish, some days I wish we had a basket out for staff.
I know, absolutely.
Because teaching is so hard and we bring in what's going on in our lives. Wouldn't that be so informative for us and help us empathize with each other as we work through one of the hardest jobs in the world?
Right.
Well, and
or
also,
just everyone on the street.
I feel like everyone. That was what I was going to say. Like, I could just see this at the university. Like, who's on red? Okay, we need to
okay, let's back off.
Yeah,
or
you just need a moment.
Or you just need a smile, right?
Need a hug, or I just need something.
You do. You need a hug. You need me to pick up your pencil when you drop it. You need whatever you need.
It's a nice verbal cue. And I also think that for a lot of kids, they're bringing stuff from home, depending on the...
Oh, absolutely. We all do.
Whatever happened in the morning, if there was a heated exchange or whatever, if that carries over into your academic day. I can remember there was an exchange in my house one morning, and I was like, I'm sending my son to school in a very fragile state, right? And I knew that if something triggered early in the morning, it was going to be a spiral out of control. So I just sent the teacher an email and I was like, hey, a little bit of a situation at home this morning. It's going to be okay, but he might be a little sensitive. I think I was getting ready to leave on a trip or something, and it kind of threw him for a loop. And
so you are speaking my language right there, because kids are bringing in so many things from home. Another part of my advocacy and my passion is to support trauma-informed learning environments where we normalize what's happening, difficult things that are happening, and we support students where they are as they come into school. And trauma does affect how the brain develops and how kids react to certain situations. So this is one way to just support kids who may have a tough time. And if I could, can I tell you about my favorite book I've read around SEL?
Yes.
Okay. So in this journey of, being passionate about SEL and then being an advocate for trauma-informed and trauma-invested learning environments, which I was during my Teacher of the Year, the book that changed my life that I believe every educator should read is called Fostering Resilient Learners. It's written by Kristen Sowers and Pete Hall. Kristen's a mental health expert, has been for over 20 years, and Pete Hall is a former middle school principal. And I read the book. The book is accessible, and what I love about it is that it's completely actionable. So you can read this book on a weekend. It's a compelling, quick read, and then you can go into your classroom, any age classroom, on Monday and do something differently to support kids. And I think every educator should read it. It's changed my life, not only what I've done in the classroom, but also how I live my life personally. So it's positively impacted my family life, because some of the concepts in there around grace and compassion, they work no matter where you are, not just if you're a teacher. So I recommend that book. Full disclosure, I am a trainer for them now because I believe so much in this work. When I met them, I connected with them at a training in Delaware, and I now train around the country on their work, which is incredibly brilliant. So I think that goes along with that whole SEL umbrella. And we want to support our kids who are coming into school with difficult experiences and difficult emotions. And the book teaches you a lot about how to do that.
I think there's a stigma, and I don't know, this is just me observing in the spaces that I work in. I think there's a stigma around trauma-informed teaching practices that should only be, you only need these in the inner city. We only need these in, schools where there's, our kids are coming from gang-related spaces. Right. And I'm an advocate for no, this is every school across the nation. Kids are experiencing trauma, whether it was the death of a parent, the death of a sibling, not totally ungang related, the cancer situation that you mentioned earlier, kids who have been severely traumatized by bullying. Those are all trauma.
You are 100% correct. So what you're speaking of is a misconception that trauma only impacts certain students or certain communities. What they've found throughout the years with studies of ACEs, which are adverse childhood events, is that trauma affects people across all populations all races. So this is something that should universally be looked at. And it could be divorce of a parent, could be death of a parent. It could be things that are part of living a life in poverty or something like that. It could be abuse and alcohol and drug abuse and dependence. It could be living with someone with mental health issues, right? So this is going to impact everybody. And that's one of the biggest things that you want to say. First of all, that's a misconception because trauma does impact everybody. And that's why I believe every educator should read the book and think about this. I wish every teacher preparation program had a component in it about supporting students impacted by trauma. I believe it's an issue of equity,
Absolutely.
Right? Because if our students aren't getting what they need, being met where they are with the proper support, it's going to impact their learning. So that's why I truly believe I'm an advocate for that as well.
What would you say to a teacher who says, you know what, my job is to educate them and give them knowledge, academic knowledge. My job is not to I'm not there to coddle them. I'm not there to get them through the divorce of their parents. I'm not there.
Right.
Like, what would you say to that teacher? Because they're out there.
So I'd say, how's that working?
Yeah.
How's that working for you? Right? Because the way that we're going to get through to our kids and help them learn is number one, we're going to connect with them. We're going to have a strong relationship. We're going to care about them. Number two, we're going to create a safe learning environment for them where it's okay to take risks and fail and everything else. And number three, we're going to creatively and innovatively deliver our content. So if it's not happening, I think you have to look inside and look and see if you're doing those things. And yes, it is our job to impart academic skills and knowledge on our students, but there's a big how you do it. And I think there's so much more to it. There's a great TED talk by Rita Pearson, and she basically talks about how every child needs a champion that believes in them and loves in them no matter who they are, what they bring. And it reminds us that relationships are a place for connection with students. We must engage in strong relationship building with our students. And when you do that, when you exhibit your care and concern in a genuine way, they're going to be there for you when they're working through difficult tasks or their learning is very hard or things are not so easy. They're going to show up for you because they believe that you care. So the first thing I say is, if a student's struggling, what's the first thing you should do? Invite them to lunch. Get to know them, talk to them, figure out what's going on with them. Don't enact some punitive measure or take away recess or punish them for not doing their homework. If a child's not doing their homework, ask them, why aren't you doing your homework? Oh, you don't have a light at home or enough pencils? Let's work on that.
Right.
Do you need some time during the day to do your homework in class because it's not happening at home or you don't have what you need? Let's talk about that. And by the way, I care about you and that's why I'm going to help you get this done.
Right.
So
I love that answer because it's right in alignment with how I feel and how I try to teach our teachers how to think about that, because you're right. How is that working for you? I love that because a lot of the teachers that tell me like I'm just there to impart knowledge, like these are usually veteran teachers that have been teaching for a really long time, but they're also ones who are like, I got to get them through the SBAC, so I got to get them through Park, or I got to get my scores up. Like that's really all that matters because that's how I keep my job, or that's how I stay on track or whatever. And that's how I'm being measured. And I'm like, when did this become about you?
Right. And I think too, that if you do all of this other relationship building and create that safe environment and communicate that care and concern, your scores will rise.
Right.
Like it's actually the byproduct of what you're putting into that culture that you're creating and the care and love you're communicating with your students. And students know.
Absolutely.
Right. So if you're acting one way and talking about a student another way outside the classroom, it's going to catch up with you. And I will tell you that, it's challenging sometimes, right? It's challenging. I have a bunch of mantras that I live by. So one is hanging in the back of my room. It says, stay calm, see the good, and be the good. So even with your most challenging student where you're like, I don't know what to do, you've got to see something good in them. And it may be something that has nothing to do with an academic skill, right? It might be something about, are they empathetic? Are they awesome on the basketball court? Are they, if they're sarcastic and witty, man, do they have a good sense of humor? Like, so see that good thing in them so that you can see them in a positive light and work with them.
Yeah.
And one of my other mantras is try harder.
Try harder.
Try harder. If something's not working, try something else. If something's not working, talk to your friends, talk to other teachers, get out on Twitter. Twitter's incredible for teachers in terms of resources and support it provides. So just try harder. And if something is not working, you have to try something else.
Absolutely.
It is our job. It is our job.
I have really enjoyed our time together today.
This has been incredible.
You reached out to us on Twitter, actually.
I did. I actually did.
And we are so grateful for the connection that that you made with us, and that we're so happy to call you our friend at the My Tech Toolbelt podcast, and that we will be sharing, I know I will be sharing your resources through the teachers that I'm teaching and Teach for America as they're going through their master's program with me.
Awesome.
And we'll just keep spreading the word about empathy and equity and access and Empatico and all of the amazing things that you talked about today.
Thank you so much.
I know this has been so enlightening and exciting, really,
Good.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. Well, you did something for me. I blog and I'm out there, sharing and inspiring, hopefully. And I really wanted to do a podcast. So you made my dream come true by inviting me on. So I really appreciate it.
Yes, we checked off a bucket list for you as well.
Yeah, and consider me your friend and resource too. I want to do nothing more than support educators and people who are out there sharing ideas and innovating and just working for the greater good in education. So I'm here.
Awesome. So are you going to be speaking anywhere, any conferences or anything coming up?
Yeah, so I have a proposal in right now at South by Southwest Education Conference, which is in Austin, Texas in March. And so I haven't heard if it's been accepted yet, but I'm still in the running. So I'll let you guys know if that comes through. Also in working with Kristen Sowers and Pete Hall, they're putting together, they have these trauma-informed institutes that they run. They ran one this summer in Tacoma, Washington. And they're also working on another one in March in Austin, Texas as well, just coincidentally. So when I get clarification on both of those dates and everything and how to participate, I'll pass that along to you guys.
Please do. Please
Awesome.
do. And so that way our listeners can really look for you out, especially if they're going to South by Southwest.
Yes.
Or
Right.
Delaware.
Right. Not a lot of people come to Delaware, but I'm here. People drive through Delaware a lot, but I'm here if you ever find yourself in Delaware.
There's
never know.
other places where they might go to visit and could swing
That's right.
by and come and visit
Exactly.
you at your school site or something like that. So we appreciate your time and your energy and your enthusiasm, Wendy. And we are looking forward to hearing all the cool things that you'll be doing over the next few years. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Thanks.
Thank you too. And
We're out.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend or on social media. As you just heard, Wendy reached out to us to be on our podcast. So do you have a tech tool you use that you think other listeners would be interested in? If so, reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, or our website, mytechtoolbelt.com. Again, thanks for listening, and we're out.